Hey, what's up, guys? I'm just coming back to you guys with part two of my series where I look back at hot takes. Um, these are all hot takes that were put into my sports group chat that I have with some friends, and we just kind of did some of these in the preseason, and I'm just kind of looking back to see which ones, are somewhat accurate and which ones are just completely wrong. And it's just, I think I might be able to do one or two more parts of this. It's just something fun. Most of these aren't meant to be taken seriously. They are hot takes. So, I just wanted to get right into it. With the first hot take for this episode being that the Lakers will have trouble gelling as a team, and as a result will be the 4 seed in the Western Conference. And obviously it is a hot take because when you have LeBron and Anthony Davis, it can be hard to have two superstars that have been the main focal points of their team coexist. But we've seen LeBron do it before, with the big three in Miami and the big three in Cleveland, actually, yeah. And although usually with the first season, especially with the Heat and even with Cleveland too, when you have LeBron, Chris Bosh, and Wade, or with Kevin Love and Kyrie, the first season they're sort of figuring each other out, and as a result they do lose a few games here and there. And in the West, especially up at the top, a few games can mean a lot. So even just losing 5 or 6 games here and there, just trying to figure out chemistry, can actually affect your seeding by a decent amount. And this didn't happen. They are the best team in the Western Conference, second best team in the entire league, but I could see where something like this would come from. And it's been a surprise, I think, for everyone, especially LeBron going in to age 35, and he's still, just as good as he is now. It's kind of insane, but they are favorites. Maybe not favorites, but they are in championship contention, and a lot of people do think of them as favorites this year, and they are the 1 seed by a few games. So this one maybe not as accurate, but you can definitely see where the mindset was coming from. Alright, the second hot take is that the Knicks will be a top 10 seed this season. And the Knicks had a very, very, very disappointing offseason. They slid down in the draft to the 3rd pick. They didn't get Kyrie and Kevin Durant. They got Julius Randle and Elfrid Payton, or he might have already been on that team. I'm not too sure. But they were trash. They suck. I don't think this was a surprise to anyone. They finished, and they guess haven't finished because the league's season technically isn't over, but they're the 12 seed. And RJ had a solid season. He put up about 14, 3, and 5. Mitchell Robinson is continuing to be a growing defender in the paint. He had a solid season. Elfrid Payton was alright, Julius Randle was alright, but when you look at this team, it's just, they don't fit. There was no clear, leader. They had coaching problems, firing David Fizdale, getting Mike Miller in. They made some front office changes, all this stuff going on this season, and they didn't have a player that could lead them. Julius Randle was considered their best player, but when you think of Julius Randle, he's not, someone that can sort of lead your team to the next step. So this team was trash. But, they're going to get another high lottery pick this year. They could potentially get someone decent, but knowing the Knicks, they'll mess it up because they're a completely inept franchise. But, you can be hopeful. The Knicks fans, should put their stimulus checks together and buy the franchise, because anything is better than James Dolan, because he is the worst owner in sports, probably. Definitely the NBA. Although, Robert Sarver is coming for that. I believe that's his name, the Suns owner. But they had an alright season, I guess. The Knicks just are trash and have been trash. And, it's just, they're bad. There's nothing much else to really say about it. They were not the 10 seed, and this was wrong. Very wrong. Alright, and the next take is that the Warriors will continue to be great and be a top 3 seed. Now this was, a lot of people actually did think the Warriors would continue to be good, but obviously they lost Kevin Durant, which was a very important piece for their last few championships, and losing him obviously hurt the team a lot. And then, with Clay going out in the finals last season, you didn't know when he was going to return. But coming into the season, a lot of people were thinking, Steph Curry is just going to have another MVP type season. It's kind of what he does, And I think it was definitely a possibility. I personally did think coming into the season he would have another crazy MVP season, because that's just the player he is. But, he got injured and he only ended up playing 5 games this season. So that didn't happen. D'Angelo Russell was a solid player. He played well. He put up about 24, 6, and 4, but that team, just wasn't very good. Eric Pascal had a pretty solid season, especially for a second-round rookie. Draymond Green did take some statistical drops, but the type of player he is and what he can bring to your team. So even though they didn't have a good season this year due to all the injuries, if Steph Curry fully rehabs and comes back, Klay Thompson fully comes back healthy, they still have Draymond Green. They have Wiggins now too, and they have a high lottery pick because their record was just so bad. This team can honestly come back and they can win another championship or two, because this team, Steph Curry's 30, 31, Klay Thompson's around that age too, same with Draymond. So they have another year or two where they can potentially go and win a championship, and it's not out of the realm of possibility at all. So, this season was definitely not what they were expecting, but at the end of the day, it probably worked out for the better. The next hot take is that the Jazz could potentially end up being somewhere around the 6 to 8 seed. And as of right now, they are the 4 seed in the West. And this was a very hot take because last season they played very well. Donovan Mitchell's been continuing to improve his game, and Rudy Gobert is obviously the great defender that he is. They brought in Bojan Bogdanovic, they brought in Mike Conley. So just looking at this roster, they had so much talent that, seeing them fall to a 6 to 8 seed didn't seem very likely at all. But at the start of the season, they were not playing well. They sort of picked it up later, which is something the Jazz do kind of often. But Mike Conley, he was playing terrible early on. He's finished the season so far putting up around 14, 4, and 3 on decent efficiency, but coming into the season, he was averaging like 5 points per 10 points per game. He was shooting 20% from the field. He just wasn't making shots, and the rest of the team the chemistry wasn't quite great with everyone, with all the new additions to the roster, but they have picked it up. Mike Conley, I believe they moved him to the bench. They might have brought him back into the starting lineup. I'm not too sure with that, but he has definitely picked up his game. He's become less of a focal point of the offense. Donovan Mitchell is running a little bit more. Bojan Bogdanovic has been huge for them. He's finished quite a lot of games, won them a lot of games at the end. And as a Pacers fan, I know how good he is. He was the reason the Pacers were what they were last season after Vic went down. And, him being the closer he is, Donovan Mitchell's been playing well, Mike Conley sort of taking a step back, and all these things have led to them winning more games and picking it up. And they are the 4 seed right now, but early on in the season, this didn't seem like too much of a hot take. They were playing pretty bad. Now, that being said, if the NBA goes right into the playoffs, I could legitimately see them losing in the first round, even as the 4 seed, just because now you have the issues with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. Donovan Mitchell, reports were that he was very angry with Rudy Gobert, after everything with with COVID that shut down the league and him getting infected. There's a lot of locker room problems with that team now, and they might have been resolved. For all we know, they could have worked out their problems and everything's okay, but that is a possibility of that being a problem. And I don't know how sort of they move forward with the team and what they do, but as of right now, they are the 4 seed going into the playoffs. So maybe this wasn't as accurate, but again, at the beginning of the season, this seemed very likely. So the next hot take is that Giannis runs away with back-to-back MVPs this season. And I don't know how much of a hot take this one necessarily is, just because he did win last season. And while, James Harden and LeBron, maybe not LeBron actually, because they missed the playoffs, but, James Harden was close. a very close second. And LeBron obviously wasn't in it last year, but this year with Anthony Davis, he was supposed to be an MVP candidate. Luka Doncic coming into the season was very hot. He was an MVP candidate for a little while. So, there was definitely some competition, but Giannis has continued to be great. He's putting up 30 points, 6 assists, 14 rebounds around. Obviously, again, the season has ended early, but if they were to finish, the Bucks were projected to be about the same as last season with around 60 wins. And there are a lot of people, maybe not a lot, but a decent amount of people around the NBA community that are sort of pushing for this LeBron for MVP vote. And I don't understand why, because when you look at the beginning of the season, the MVP race was Giannis versus Luka Doncic, right? And then going sort of into December, January, February, it was Giannis versus James Harden. And then now starting around the end of February, beginning of March, it sort of transitioned into Giannis versus LeBron James argument. And the problem I see with that is it's MVP of the whole season, right? So when you see Giannis being in the conversation since the beginning of the season, and then all these other players are sort of inserted into the race. And obviously there is recency bias with fans. The season is very long. It's multiple months, so it's kind of hard to forget what was going on in that beginning of the season. But Giannis has had continued dominance since basically the first game of the season, and it's kind of hard to ignore the best record in the league. He has some of the insane stats, right? 30 points, 6 assists, 14 rebounds. I've already gone through those. And I think another knock on an argument possibly for like James Harden or LeBron James is, LeBron has Anthony Davis, the best big man in the league. James Harden has Russell Westbrook, one of the best point guards in the league. Giannis' second best player is Chris Middleton, who is a very good player, and he's the perfect secondary option for Giannis. He's an efficient scorer, but he's not on the level of a Russell Westbrook or an Anthony Davis. So when you look at everything the Bucks have been doing, everything Giannis has been doing, compared to everyone else in the league, it's hard to not give that vote to Giannis, and I do think he's going to win MVP again this year. So for the next few, I'm probably going to go a little faster just because the video is kind of running a little long. But the next hot take is that Miles Turner will be first team all defense this season. And, last season he was the blocks leader. He was I personally think, maybe I'm a little biased as a Pacers fan, but I think he was snubbed for Defensive Player of the Year. He led the league in blocks with 2.7 a game, and he was the focal point of that Pacers offense. And coming into the season, people expected the same thing from him, and he has taken a little bit of a step back statistically. He's putting up 2.2 blocks, but his interior presence is still there, and he is still like the focal point of the offense. Obviously, Domantas Sabonis has taken an all-star jump, but defensively, Miles Turner, I personally think, is still one of the best bigs in the entire league. And obviously this season you can give it to Anthony Davis or Rudy Gobert, but I think that Miles Turner, maybe he won't be defense first team again just because Rudy Gobert and Anthony Davis are there, but he is still one of the best big man defenders in the entire league. The next hot take is that when Victor Oladipo comes back from his injury, the Pacers possibly stumble for a few games, and that affects their seeding for the playoffs. And this did actually happen. When Vic came back, he wasn't playing great, and he was averaging about 14, 3, and 3, but on pretty low splits for him. He's putting up on 46, 30, 78 splits, which isn't horrible, but for Victor Oladipo, a player of his caliber, you expect a little better. Obviously still coming back from that injury, he's got to get back into conditioning, back with the sort of how the team runs their offense. There was a lot of the team changed. They brought in TJ Warren, brought in Jeremy Lamb, brought in TJ McConnell. Domantas Sabonis played like an all-star this season. They brought in Malcolm Brogdon. So there was a lot of moving pieces with this team. So getting integrated into the offense obviously was going to be very difficult. And he hasn't quite adjusted yet. So the Pacers did sort of skid a little bit. And hopefully with this extended break and maybe even going to the playoffs, they can sort of work out the kinks of the offense and integrate Vic fully. And they'll be ready for next season, because I do believe he still can be an all-star player. He's still one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire league, and with this Pacers team, I think it might be something similar to what happened with Kristaps and to an extent Gordon Hayward, where, when they're coming back from this sort of big injury, it does take a season and another full offseason to completely recover and integrate themselves back into the rotation, because that is a very large aspect of basketball, especially with a team like the Pacers where there isn't one player, they all play a team brand of basketball. So this did happen. This was very accurate, and I'm just hoping that going into next season, they sort of work out all the kinks of their offense. Last hot take I want to cover for this video, because I am running a little out of time, is that LeBron's stats will drop across the board everywhere except for assists, which he will average at least 11 of. Now, coming into the season, LeBron, he's 35 now, I believe. Bringing in Anthony Davis, who is, who was a very large part of his offense in New Orleans, almost the entire offense after DeMarcus Cousins went down. And a lot of people did actually think this, that, he is aging. They have a lot of moving pieces with this team. They brought in another, arguably top 5 player in the league, so his stats might drop. However, and I can't believe I'm saying this because it still blows my mind every time I think about this, age 35 LeBron had better stats than previous years. His points per game barely changed. He went down, I think, 1. He's averaging 26, 11, and 8 this season. So about the same as last season. Again, his points might have dropped by 1. His rebounds dropped by like half a rebound, and his assists jumped. And so he's playing even better than he has been in previous seasons, and he's at age 35. He's still an MVP candidate. The Lakers are the best team in the Western Conference, and he is still the same LeBron we've had for 15 years now, it blows my mind every time I think about it. I mean, it's incredible, and I don't want to sort of get into the Jordan LeBron debate on this channel ever. I'm not ever going to make a video about it. I think they're both great players, so I'm just not even going to bring up the debate in like a video. I'm not going to say who I think is better, but what LeBron has been doing is very good for age 35. Again, he's still an MVP candidate. He's still putting up the same stats with higher assists, because he is averaging 11 assists per game, which is what this hot take mentioned. But his other stats did not drop, and I think that's kind of the crazy thing about this team. I would still give the Bucks a bit of an edge if they were to meet in the finals, just because, the whole playoffs is a very long journey. Giannis, this whole team is younger. I personally think Mike Budenholzer is a better coach than Frank Vogel, although I do like Frank Vogel as a coach. But I do give the edge to Mike Budenholzer there, and I think Giannis in a 7-game series might be too much for the Lakers to handle, especially with the supporting cast. Chris Middleton's a very good player. He stepped up in the playoffs last season. Eric Bledsoe, while he doesn't have the best track record in the playoffs, he's still a very good player. Brook Lopez is still a good player. This team is built. It's a perfectly built team around Giannis with all the shooting they have. And this team, even in the regular season, it's still crazy that they had games where, you can sit Giannis out. He doesn't have to play 35 minutes per game, because this team is so good that they're up by 30 and then they sub him out and they can still win by, 25, 30 points per game anyway, just because this team without Giannis is still a good team. It's just Giannis sort of puts them over that edge. So I think in a championship scenario, I would still give the Bucks the edge, but you cannot deny that what LeBron has been doing is incredible. And I think that is going to conclude this video. There was a few on here that I didn't really talk about, but this video is already running about 20 minutes long, so I want to end it real quick. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment. If you want more of this content, definitely subscribe. Comment any suggestions you have for future videos, and thanks for watching.